Hello and welcome to the Heads and Volleys podcast with me, Lee Dunn. So in today's Heads and Volleys episode, I'm really excited to introduce Michael Carroll. He and I have connected a little bit over Twitter and we've managed to make this work, and I'm really excited to dig into a lot of the stuff today. So Michael, welcome to Heads and Volleys.
Oh, thank you. Happy to be here. Fan of the show.
Will you give us a little intro, who you are, what you do, kind of where you're living, and what you do when we love this game of soccer?
Sure. I'm 45 years old. I live in Houston, Texas right now. I've been coaching since 1997. That was my first give it a try, right? 1997 as a young lad in the Navy at the time. It was I volunteered at the local YMCA, right? I was in the Navy, and we the ship that I was stationed on was going to be in port for a long time, and the division that I was part of said, I want you guys to go out and volunteer somewhere, right? And they gave me a list of stuff. There was like a list of like 30, and they're like, here's some ideas. It doesn't have to be this, but here's some ideas. And I saw that the YMCA was on the list. I started soccer at the YMCA when I was like 4 and 5 years old, right? And it was basically just a bunch of us running around in like a big group chasing a soccer ball back then, right? We've come a long way in the country since the late 70s and early 80s. So, but I said, you know what? I'll go volunteer there. I'm playing soccer for the Navy at the time too. So I was like, I can go volunteer and go see what they need. And they were like, yeah, we need coaches. And I'm like, great. And so here I am, I'm 22 years old, and I was fully ill-equipped mentally to handle 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds at the time, right? Single guy, no kids. They just like throw a bunch of parents and 5-year-olds at me and say, go coach them for the season.
Good luck.
And yes, with no training, no nothing. I'm like, all right, I'll just rely on my own background and my own coaching from my own coaches from when I was a kid. And it was rough compared to the way as smooth as things work today, even though I'm working in the same age groups. But I did fall in love with grassroots coaching then and working with the young kids. And I thought it was great. I didn't necessarily mean for it to turn into a career later on.
Sure.
I was just trying to do so it's a bit of an unconventional start to my coaching path. And I didn't really get fully into coaching. I just kept volunteering, honestly, until about 8 years ago.
Wow.
So from 22 until my late 30s, I just volunteered with local sports organizations and YMCAs. There's an organization up here called FFPS, Fun, Fair, Positive Soccer, in Houston. And I volunteered for them for a couple of seasons. And, I didn't have any kids at the time. I do now. But I was working in a local sports organization, volunteering for a local sports organization as a coach. And then one of the other coaches that I was working with, a good friend of mine, he goes, people get paid to do this way worse than you. And I said, well, I don't know about all of that. He goes, yeah, you're really, really good at this and you should give it a go. And so I started on my licensing stuff and started working up the USSF licensing back when the E-license was a thing. And stuff. So, and the F license, I think, I don't know. It went all the way to Z back then. And so, I've just been working on that, and got with a local club, Total Football Club. I worked with Corver as well, Corver training. That was actually the guy the gentleman that runs Total Football Club also ran the local Corver skills training at the time. And so he brought me in to work with him on Corver. And then I moved from there into the club and started working with the youngest players that we had. And I've decided to just stay there. I've decided that that's where I want to stay. I'm where I want to be with as far as age group goes.
That's really interesting that you made that decision, because most people, as they start getting into coaching, it seems to be that when you get started, you deal with the little ones, you deal with the lowest level, the real grassroots. And then as a coach, you start getting licensing, you start getting experience, and you start getting promoted. You start working with older players that can kick a ball, players that can put 2, 3, 4, 5 passes together that you can rondo with. And so what's the reason for you deciding to stick in that area? Why stay in that?
To be honest, I feel like it's the biggest need. It's where I can have the greatest effect on the future of players in my city, state, country. I feel like I can have the biggest effect, the greatest effect, helping players fall in love with the game, fall in love with the ball, fall in love with the game, because that's the biggest thing that I can do, and helping non-soccer parents learn how to be soccer parents, how to get a soccer culture into your home, because that's what it takes. It's unlike baseball. It's unlike American football. It's unlike basketball, in that you can't maximize, in my opinion, a player's development without the parent. The parent and the coach have to be a team, and a lot of the parents weren't soccer players. A lot of the parents of players that I coached, they weren't soccer players or weren't involved in soccer when they were young. I've got a lot of basketball dads, baseball dads, and American football moms. And so I have to coach them on what they need to work on, the kinds of things that they need to work on at home, and not just what they need to work on, but how to make your kid excited about it, to help. I only get the kids for like 4 hours a week, 5 hours a week tops as a general rule, right? And so it would be unreal. I can't maximize a player's development. It's not possible for any coach to maximize a player's development in 5 hours a week. It's just not. I don't even care if you have them year round. You'd have to have a massive ego to think that you're the reason a player is maximizing himself, right? So it involves me getting with the parent and saying, I can't do it by myself. I need you. And this is how you do it. Get in with them, and don't even make it like homework. Don't go, I need 100 toe taps in 2 minutes. Go. That's not how I want you running it at home. I want you going up to them going, hey, what was that thing coach was showing you? They called them toe taps. Can you show me how to do that? Right. And get them involved, help them fall in love with the ball, throw a bunch of balls all over the house. We'll go over that in a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
and so the best thing that I can do as a coach is to help them fall in love with the ball, the game, and help the parents learn how to get the culture into the house. So that's the best thing that I can do as an American coach. So
you talk about like the influence of them being at home with their parents, and I think about even with older kids where the parents, they don't know anything really. Typically, they talk about what they see. So a large part of what I do with my players is to educate them on educating their parents. And so the conversation after a game or after practice is typically, how was practice? How was the game? And the kid says good. And then that's really about it. And so we created with our group of players, and granted these are 13, 14 years old, where they set like a list of conversation points that they can have with their parents. And they said that their parents can only talk to them about the game or about practice if the parents can ask a question related to how we play. So I'm a big proponent of having a game model and understanding positional profiles. And so the parents have had to learn what we're doing so they can have a conversation, because otherwise they're like, well, why did you pass there? Why didn't you drill? Why didn't you score? Why didn't you do this?
Sure.
So then you talk about like, it's almost like a flip reverse with the parents on educating them on how to have that conversation with a kid and how to engage that kid. So you talk about like, what did coach show you? Do you have like, how else do you do it? Do you show the parent stuff too? Do you communicate with that with them? Is that, I like how you said, like, I tell them that I need their help. And I think that's really interesting approach to buy, like they then going to buy into it too, as opposed to being told, you, like you said, you need to get your kid to do 100 toe taps a day.
Yeah. So one of the things I do, especially at the youngest ages, we have a multitude of programs for kids under the age of 9, U5, U6, U7, U8, right? And at the beginning of the grassroots program, and we're talking about 4 or 5-year-olds and some 6-year-olds, I will actually run a session, and that session, those sessions are as much for the parents as they are for me. Right? I'll bring up parents. Here's what I want you working on at home. We've got one player, one ball. Here's what I want you doing with the kids at home, right? Watch what we're doing. Record it if you have to, if you want to, ask me questions. That's what I'm here for. I'm your knowledge base. And so come in, I want you to understand what we're trying to do here from a player development standpoint. Here's the pathway. Here's what we're working towards. And they might surprise you. In 6 months to a year, you probably won't even recognize them. And it's amazing how fast kids develop at that age. If everybody's on the same page, if everybody's working together, it's incredible. Because if you've got a culture in the home and you've got a culture in your club of development and fostering love for the ball and love for the game, if the kid has to develop. It's non-negotiable. There's no way to not develop on some level. Now, some kids will develop faster than other kids. It's just a given. And for the same reason that, 2 kids can sit next to each other in a classroom all year long, have the same teacher saying the same words to them, and one gets an A and one gets a D. Right? Yeah. They will develop at different rates, but they will all develop to some level. And,
so what are they signing up for? So when parents sign their kids up, what are they signing up for? What are they committing to when they say, we'll do whatever you're asking us to do? What's their understanding? What's going to be the benefit of them joining Total Football Club or joining in this kind of process?
Sure. So obviously, once again, we have a bunch of different levels. And the first thing that they're going to understand and see is that we're going to put your player, your young player, where they should be to maximize their development, right? If you take a player who, let's say he's 6 years old, 7 years old, just fell in love with the ball yesterday, or just discovered the game yesterday, right? And they bring me the player, I can't put him with 7-year-olds who've been playing with me since they were 4. That's a different 7-year-old, right? So you have to have levels to develop those players. We have our competitive level and we have our player development program over here at TFC. And so you have to put them in there. So then that's, when we start talking about tryouts and things, the parent is trying us out at that level, right? I'm not trying the kid out to see if he's good enough to play for me. The parent is trying me out and to see if I'm good enough or if I have a spot that will help their player develop, right? And so at that age, and we see, I say, well, here's where I think your young player will fit in. Here's where, this will be kind of the plan. We've had a lot of players start out here and then move along to end up at professional academies and things like that down the road. But yes, I mean, we have a relationship with Houston Dynamo Academy, for instance, and we're what you call a partner in development with them, and they're always working with us, and I'm always working with them on the development process. We have monthly meetings with them, and with the academy director, Paul, over there, and they're just a great group of people over there, and they've been very, very supportive of what we're trying to do over at Total Football Club, and understanding that development, starts starting at the youngest ages, starting at home, and then growing it from there. That's the process. So when they're signing up with us, hopefully what they feel like they're getting from us is a pathway to development, to making sure that their player continues to fall in love with the game and continues to advance in whatever, what's the word I'm looking for? whatever they want to do. There's the expectations. There's no expectations set for 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, right? And we move them along at their pace. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
And I think it's really important. That's why I love asking that question, because often people miss that point. Like it's come and join our club. Come and join our club. We partner with Houston Dynamo. You'll be a pro, and that's so forgotten that actually you're joining, and it's gonna actually cost you some time, mom and dad, because we need you. And I think it's so interesting. Like you said, it's about developing that player for them to develop. It's a pathway to develop. It's for them to play a sport that they can get competent at, that they can have fun playing. And let's get into, so the partnership with Dynamo, and I know the partnership also includes Tom Byers and Soccer Starts at Home. And I've had several conversations with Tom, and I follow his work all the time. And I saw him at the convention years ago, and it's so simple. And it's so simple in the generic term, like soccer starts at home. You've said it 10 times here already. And so did that align with you, or did you align with it? And then it all just worked perfect in kind of the whole partnership growing. And I can see that this is clearly something that you care about. So this is a magic moment. Tom Byers is here, the man who starts stuff.
What I have to be honest with you, I was already trying to coach parents on what they needed to do at home a little bit before I realized Tom Byer was like a person, right? And I like Tom a lot. He's a great person. I've had a lot of conversations with him myself, and he's just a great guy. But him coming to Houston just kind of not only reinforced what we were doing. With our already partnership that we had with the Dynamo. It just mixed together really, really well. And so, yeah, we fully support that soccer starting at home idea and the ideology. So like when people bring me, when a parent comes and says, hey, what program would be good for my 3 or 4-year-old? I was like, you don't need a program yet. I've told 3-year-olds, the parents of 3-year-olds, no, not yet. It's okay. The time will come. Here's what you should do. Take a look at this soccer starts at home information. Go get some balls, put them in your house, and just play with your kid. And take a look at that. And then when they become a little more adept, confident, comfortable, come back and see me, and we'll put them where they should be. And there's no need to rush into this a program. No. And so. I know it affects my paycheck, but still he's doing the right thing, right? I
agree. Yeah. So does it, we're
a fan.
Are you seeing an impact on even perhaps just the culture of soccer within the club and within the community, that there's like a commitment to the game beyond just coming to the practice? Could you describe what that difference may look like, or what you're seeing now with kids, that especially younger?
So there's been a massive impact in I'd say over the last 2 years, 18 months to 2 years. There was a time when clubs were more like fighting for territories, right? And you probably see that all over the United States. Yeah. Clubs, playing tug of war over players and things like that. Now there's actually different clubs are kind of starting to work together in the development process, to the point to where one player this past offseason, one club referred a player to us, one of their players to us. And I remember when it was last season, I identified the player a little bit when he was playing against us. And I talked to the coach who I had a relationship with of the other team, and I said, "Hey, man, you got a good little player there playing center mid." And he said, "Yeah, and you know what? He's actually a 2012. He's not a 2011." And I said, "Well, I mean, that's really, really good." And he got frank with me. He said, "If you want me to be honest, we've probably taken the young man as far as we are capable of taking him, right? If I look at myself in the mirror, I've taken him as far as I can take him. We need to get him over to you guys." That was what he said. And I said, "Okay, well, this summer, let's take a look at that. And so he came over and he worked with us in some trainings, and then we offered him a position. And his club is very happy that he was able to jump in with us and to continue his development. And that's the kind of relationships that are starting to form in the city. And so I'm really, really happy to see that.
That's, I think that if a soccer purist hears that, that's all they've ever wanted, really. You know, I grew up in the UK where we would have that kind of pathway. You would go on to the next and to the next, and you would move, and it would always be like an understood thing that this was a good thing for you as an individual. This is the next step. And compare that to this wild time right now, but even the tryout window that we've been going through right now, and these kids, they try out, or you have a Zoom conversation with them, and then the parents call you the next day saying, we've been offered 5 other teams and we don't know what to do. And everybody's fighting and saying the same thing. Now imagine if there was that pyramid, and if it continues like that, how confident a player is going to feel, how comfortable the parents will feel. It benefits everybody. And yeah, that club probably loses some registration fees, but if we're doing it right, there's plenty of kids that should be coming in on the backfill, and it should just continue to flow for kids to play soccer.
Yeah, and they're in a different neighborhood than we are. They're in a different part of the city. Houston's a massive city, but they're in a different part of the city. So the hope is that when someone comes to me and they say, hey, you know, I've got a 5-year-old in this part of town, what should I do? I can say, hey, take them over here, right? And then hopefully they will develop the player to the point to where they're ready to move on to the next level, which is us right here. And then we hopefully will be able to move the player on to the next level, right? Yeah. Which is hopefully the academy level soccer. And so it's if ideally all of it working together would get the players who show the passion and the development and it would get the player pool into the right order. I mean, that's what you're looking for your professional academy. I mean, Houston's not like London where you can throw a rock and hit 3 professional academies, right?
Sure. Yeah.
The Dynamo are the only professional academy we have here. So that's it's always a goal to, we've always said I want to develop players to the point to where they're too good to play for me. And
yeah, imagine that. Yeah, instead of holding them. Instead of holding them and winning games with them, you actually pass them on. Yeah. Now that's a lot of work, I imagine. That having relationships and connections with people, and just having a finger on the pulse of the layout of the community and of other clubs and other parts of the city. That's a lot of work, and I think it's huge props to be able to have those relationships, because a lot of people tend to focus on their own first, and then everybody complains about not having enough time. And if we're really about it for the kids, then we need to have the time for those relationships, right?
Right, absolutely. Building the relationship is the most important thing that I do for the player, right? Because it makes them trust me. It helps them. I don't want to say makes them. It helps them to trust me, and that's a big deal because kids are skeptical by nature. They're always told stranger danger. Don't talk to them. They can be shy. I have a 6-year-old and a 14-year-old now, and they're the same way. You get them around new people that they've never met before, and they get a little shy. And so kids are skeptical by nature. And so you have to earn their trust, their respect. You have to earn their work rate. You have to earn everything from them. And once you get a player to where they're looking at you not like a boss, but like a mentor, right? Like someone that they trust, that they believe in you. Because I need the players to believe in me. I need the players to trust me, and to a certain extent want to please the coach, right? You want the players to want to please the coach a little bit too, along with themselves. And I'm gonna be honest. I'm not easy to play for, right? At a competitive level, I'm not the easiest person to play for. It's one of those things. I'm very demanding in work rate and focus and stuff like that. And I don't get on them for making mistakes. I get on kids for not trying. right?
Sure.
And so that's for me and the parents to work together to build in a player, to build that grit, to build that work rate, to build that that stuff. And so that's also part of the conversation you have to have with a parent. I've told plenty of parents, look, I don't want you yelling at them from the sideline. Please don't. I'm hard enough to play for. Okay, they don't need two of me. They need one of me and one of you. So when they come off of the field, and they get into the car, right? I don't want them hearing from you. Why didn't you do this and this and this? That's my job. When they get into the car and they go, Dad, Mom, how did I play? And I want you to go, and we just love watching you play. How did the coach say you played? Right? I mean, we loved watching you play. That's what I want them by the time they hit the parking lot to forget they had a game or a practice or whatever that day. So just you be the parent. Let me be that. Somebody's got to be soft, and we can't have two hard people.
Good cop, bad cop. I'll be the bad one.
a little bit. Yeah. Once I develop the relationship with the player, then I can come over and say, hey, you and I both know you're better than that as they age. I wouldn't say that to a 4-year-old, but I've got some 7 and 8-year-olds now who are pretty darn good and have been with me for 3 years. And I can go over to them and I can say, hey, you and I both know that you're better than the effort that you're giving me. I need to be able to talk to them like that and then go, yeah, I got it, coach. And they're perfectly capable of absorbing that. I think we underestimate what young kids are able to accomplish.
I believe that too. And I've spent a lot of time watching coaches that feel they have a certain belief in what the players should do, but they never really ask the player, or they never really test the player. It's often, this is what we're going to do. And there's never really like an inclusion or what do you see? What do you think about that? What do you think we could do here? What do you think we could do about that? So how do you build that relationship? We always talk about building relationships. What are your, I guess, kind of go-to things, or what some of the important things that you do with every player or with most players? How are you building, especially with such young children too?
Yeah. So the first thing you have to do is you have to ask them questions, right? You want them to start the conversation. Hey, how you doing in school? That's always a good one, right? How's school going? And, how are things? You got a favorite movie? You seen any movies lately? You just want the kids to start the conversation, ask them a question about them. And usually they invariably start talking about their lives. I was playing with my big brother. I was like, oh, do you play with your big brother a lot? Yeah, and so you get used to you get them used to talking to you and having an open dialogue with them. That will actually make coaching with them a lot better, a lot easier down the road, because they'll look at you, they'll get with you eye to eye, and you can see that that they're absorbing what you're instructing them. And I do the same thing when I'm coaching. I ask that a guided discovery is a big thing for me, right? Where I'll say, hey, what do you see in this situation? What is your, I'm free. Hold on, everybody, relax a little bit. What do you see in this situation right here? What do you think your decision should be here? Should you dribble? Should you pass? Should you, what do you think? What are you thinking here? And tell me why. And you want the kids to become good decision makers on the field. You want them to be able to solve the problem and become aware of what's around them spatially and stuff like that. And if I'm telling them, they're not necessarily absorbing it, but if they tell me, then I know they understand it. If we work through it, then I know they understand it, and they'll be able to apply it in all of the situations in the game down the road. And so that's what we I think we don't build very good decision makers. There's a ton of technical kids out there. Kids are technical all over the place,
especially
they're
right
doing
now.
Their show. Yeah, they're doing tons of technical work everywhere. and they're doing these Zoom sessions and stuff. But I don't think we really build good decision makers, kids who are capable of processing the information and making good decisions quickly. And I think that is one of the areas that we need to work on. And you do that by having the kid figure it out with you right there. And it takes time. It actually takes work on coach's part to do those things. But that's kind of the difference between educating and just, I guess coaching is more like educating to me. But I mean, that's what you're trying to do, right? That's what a coach does. A coach is an educator, right? Rather than just sit there and say, okay, go play and not pay attention to them and them not learn anything. So
it takes immense patience. And if I think back to, everybody's in a hurry up mode. Everybody wants to get to the end as fast as they can. They want to create the next best player. They want to create tournament championship winning teams. And you think about that process. If you're a coach listening to this, just shut your eyes and think about being on the field with your kids and you're coaching a 4v4 and you're trying to work on, I don't know, combination play, for example, at any age. Now, the patience is saying, how could you combine here? What do you see here? What do you need of these players around you? What do the players around you need to provide for you? And all of these questions that start challenging these kids to see the bigger picture of not just them with the ball or the forcing it. And it's not, and a regular coach, or I say a regular coach, that might be disrespectful, but any coach could go in and say, you should play there and then it should go there. That's a combination. That's what we're looking for. Go. And then they do it, and they don't do it, as you said, without understanding why, and they don't have those decisions. They're not developing those decisions. And so coach said, this is how we're going to combine. This is what a combination is, and away we go. Now, do you think that, is that what a typical session looks like for you? A lot of kind of, not discussion, but the idea of guided discovery? Is it games play? Is it kind of putting the kids in those positions and the games to the situations to fail and to learn and to be challenged constantly?
Right. So for me at the grassroots level, which is, U6 through U9 for us, my typical session is the first 25% of any practice is one player, one ball, technical work, dribbling, changing directions, ball move, becoming comfortable on the ball and those kinds of things before you can put kids in decision-making situations. They have to be technical enough to be able to handle the pressure, be able to move the ball and those kinds of things. But once they're technical enough to be able to move the ball under pressure, to receive with an open body and pass, play with their head up a little bit, checking their shoulders, those kinds of things, I go away from the technical development, and not completely, but it may go down to like 15 minutes of technical warm-up, right? And into small-sided games, positional games. I mean, my U7s are very, very capable of running 3v3 plus 2s, 3v3 plus 3 positional games, and that kind of stuff. And because they're able to pass and receive properly, they can dribble with the proper parts of their foot. Because when they got to us when they were 5, right, that was what we worked on. And so there's a plan. We have a plan for the development at the club, and it says that at U6 in the fall season, this is what we work on. This is the terminology we're using. They're going to go from here to here in the U6 fall season, and then in the spring season they go from here to here. This is the terminology. These are the sessions. I mean, I have 106 sessions laid out in a row from U6 through U9, and that's the development. And you can see if you look at all 3 years, U6, U7, U8, and into U9, that I'm increasing the amount of decision-making required, increasing the speed with which it's needed to be made, and decreasing the amount of technical work, because technical work is now something I'm demanding that they do on their own at home, right? One player, one ball, those kinds of things. You're juggling, all of that stuff. You now need to take your own responsibility and your own development for this into your own hands. You work on that at home. My job at this point is now to make you a better, to increase your knowledge of the game, to increase your knowledge of your spatial awareness, your decision making, and all of those other things. And there's a clear progression through there.
And I imagine kids that maybe slack off or are not continuing to focus on the development stuff, it becomes clear, perhaps it becomes clear very quickly that then I think that if we're creating environments for kids to want to exceed, like they want to play soccer because they keep coming to soccer. Hopefully, at least they would tell their parents that they don't, or they tell you if you built a relationship with them that they don't like soccer anymore, and that's okay.
Sure.
But they're coming to an environment where everybody is continuing to get better, and this is part of my own theory too. Is you work on the how on your own, because when you come to practice, then we work on the why. But you need the how to perform the why, just like you said. And then if you can't control, you don't know how to control the ball, you don't know how to take that first touch to break a moment of pressure, then the why is going to fall apart. And collectively as a group, we know where the why is breaking down. And I imagine that's even kids at the young ages that you work with, they know when somebody is not as good as them or is better than them. They know that. And I can only imagine that just creates an environment that every kid is trying all of the time. They want to continue to be better.
Well, it's creating a competitive environment in your own club without doing it intentionally. I mean, you're not sitting here saying, you know what, I'm going to demote you or I'm going to promote you. You don't say that to a 7-year-old, right? But
get out.
Yeah, you've been cut. No, we don't talk to kids that way. But it's I think that the kids that may have started later with us, obviously the kids that jump into the program when they're 4 or 5 years old have a significant advantage over a player that gets with us when they're 7, right? Yeah. And so, but that doesn't mean that 7-year-old's future's already gone, right? I've seen plenty of kids come in and just naturally take hold and pick it up because they're intelligent, they're focused, they work hard, it's being embraced by the parents, or they've come to us from another club where they were not pleased with the development process over there, and they like, and we can move the kids in. As a coach, you also have to see the potential in a player who hasn't been with you, right? I mean, they come in and say, look, this kid's, he's got something. He's raw, and if we put him in the right environment, I think he'll grow. You have to be able to say that about players. You have and see that in the players. So that's one of the reasons why I also feel like you need experienced coaches in grassroots, right? If you don't have experienced coaches, you're going to lose that ability to recognize what's inside a kid, what's inside a young player, and the ability to bring it out of them. And so,
well, that goes back to kind of how I said, like, it's often a young and inexperienced coach who gets put with the little ones, and then as you get lower licenses, you go higher and higher. And I think I completely agree with you. The experience of somebody that understands the game or understands the next level of play for a player to help them through this current level, I think is so important. And to see the big picture in the end, like we're going to try and get you to this higher level, and to get you there, we need to focus here now. And I have that experience. I know what I'm doing, or I have the competency as a coach to help challenge you. And how does your staff feel? I mean, it definitely takes a certain level of coach or a certain personality to work with those younger players and to often get on their level, because even though we're starting to develop players that can play soccer, they're still kids. They still like to watch SpongeBob SquarePants, and they still like to talk about, all sorts of stuff like that. So what's your kind of training process with your coaches, or what's your conversation like with them for working with that age?
So, I mean, I have 2 roles with the club. I'm the grassroots coordinator, and I'm also the camp coordinator. I handle all of the summer camps and winter camps and spring break camps and things like that, as far as scheduling the coaches and scheduling the curriculum and everything that's going on at those camps. And so one of the things that the club will do is they will place a young coach under the tutelage of a senior coach or somebody who's been around a long time, knows knows the philosophy of the club and what we're trying to do at our levels, and understands the development process. And it's my job to work with that young coach and say, okay, the coach is good here, or maybe this coach will be better with older players because of personality. There's been plenty of times a coach was put with me and they weren't right and it's not because of knowledge or anything. It's just the personalities can be a little bit abrasive at times in some coaches or in some. So I say, hey, why don't we take this coach and move him up to the 06s, right, or something like that. He would do better working at U13, U14, U15. That's probably a better place for him. Let's give him to the coordinator at that age group and let that coordinator train that particular coach. So positioning the coaches in the proper environment is crucial. I think if you want to maximize player development, I mean, that's what you have to do. And it also allows me to look at the coaches who are punctual or not punctual, or who seem to be planning things out properly, and who's actually passionate about the job, or has the ability to understand what it is we're trying to do.
I think it's also like, it's such a, I want to say dangerous, but it's a real fragile time, because a young kid is coming into an environment where, like you said, they don't, especially as a younger kid, they don't know anyone. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know why they're there. Their parents have just signed them up. And now they're going to try this whole new game with these new kids, with these new people. One bad experience, and it's like a bad coach who says the wrong thing or teases or doesn't engage a kid in the right way. You've lost that kid.
Yeah. And that's the part of being a coach of a young. If you give them a bad experience, they may never come back to the game. They may decide baseball is their game, or basketball is their game, or whoever the nicest coach was out of the 3 or 4 sports they're trying, right? May end up helping that player fall in love with a different sport. And so I think it's very, very important to keep the right personalities where they belong. It's important for a coach. And once again, this is where it comes back to being an experienced coach working with younger kids. It's important that a coach, because not all of the kids have the same personality. You can't coach them all the same way. I have a young player who's got ADHD, magnificent young player. I mean, he is absolutely spectacular. I can't coach him the same way that I coach all of the other kids, right? If you try to coach a kid like that in a group setting, I'm going to lose him. So I have to get eye to eye with him, make sure he's understanding what I'm saying. Yes, coach, got it. He's acknowledging me and understanding what I want. So you have to be able to coach the players on their level using terminology that they understand. So, I mean, we even have vocabulary lessons. So
it's so interesting that you say that, because I just developed with my own team the idea of a common language, like things that I say a lot, things that they can expect to hear, or words that they want to use in certain ways. So like a kill it is one example that we use, which is something that we use within our team. So they all understand it in a common language, or a language that they understand. It seems so simple when you look at it because you've done it. But at the time, you're like, why don't the kids understand it? And I go back to the idea of English coaches in the Bay Area. I often hear all sorts of English slang, whip it in and smash it across. And I'm like, oh my God, do these kids know what that means?
I remember watching a game several years ago going, what does that mean? Get out on the front foot. What does that even what does that even mean?
My dad used to say to me, chalk, get chalk on your boots.
Yes.
And I said that to a kid once. I said, and when I was playing around with terminology, I said, so what does get chalk on your boots mean? And the kid looked at me like, what, chalk, boots, what? And it was like, we play on turf and it's already pre-lined. They don't understand what it was. And so this is a prime example.
I've got coaches opposing me screaming, get out on the front foot, and stuff. And I'm like, what does that even mean? That kid's
hopefully
from Detroit.
They understand it because he's taught them.
Yes. So we have board sessions and vocabulary lessons and things like that where I sit down with the kids. I have the kids sit down. I pull out the board. We go over what everything means, and then I have them move the players on the board, right? The magnets on the board. Where should this player be? Where should this player be in this situation? And those kinds of things. And then I can go back later on in the practice and pause the practice and go, okay, where would you put yourself on the board right now? Okay, look at the situation. Where would you put yourself on the board? And I'd be over here. And I'm there we go. And so it just being able to communicate with the players, and you need to have a multitude of ways that you do that visually, through the board sessions, on the field. There's a bunch of different ways that you can have them help them learn,
which all require a patience and a commitment, which all require an understanding from the coach to know where they are at that stage with that player, that this is the player's learning opportunity and not the coach's ego chance to create a World Cup winning 7-year-old.
Well, yeah, it's about the 7-year-old, right? You want the 7-year-old to become my time of becoming a great player is over. It's not about me. It's I failed miserably in that, by the way, but I'm a much better coach than I ever was a player. But it's about the 7-year-old and their development of their confidence too, their confidence, their abilities, their belief in you and themselves. So it's about helping that 7-year-old become a better, more confident person and player. And that's I think that's kind of what our job is. That's the primary role of our job.
My as we wrap up, one of my favorite things with my players was I promised that I'd give them all a nickname. And I don't feel like nicknames, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel like nickname is a very kind of big culture thing with my players. I feel like they all go by their name. Name. And I have 2 Maxes on one of my teams. And so everyone just shouts Max, and both Maxes turn around like, how have you not got through this? And so with my last name, Dunn, I grew up, my nickname was Dunny all the time. Dunny. And that's why people would call me Lee. And I'd be, are they talking to me? Is that me they're talking to? And I played soccer at university with a guy, his nickname was Budgie. I didn't even know his real name for 2 years. I just knew him as Budgie. And when with my players now, they are so, maybe because they're younger too, they're not familiar with like a nickname culture. And so giving them a nickname has made a huge difference. And one of my kids, he loves milkshakes. And when he scores a hat trick, he gets a milkshake from his parents, and say whatever you want about reward and stuff. But so I call him Milky. He's one of the Maxes and I call him Milky. And everybody calls him Milky. And I know that when he hears the word Milky, he's thinking about soccer because that's where his nickname came from. And he's got that story forever. And now he has this identity within this soccer team. He is Milky. This is like the part of the relationship that I've built with him. So do you have like things that you do like that with your players, like secret handshakes or anything like that? Any kind of final notes of wisdom for building relationships with players like that?
Well, I mean, I have to be honest, I do, but it's not intentional. I think it's developed over the years where, the handshaking, some kids are an outside of the fist, some kids are fist bump, some kids are a full shake, Some kids, these days we got the elbow going on, but none of it is really intentional. It just comes from learning your player and then having an individual relationship with that particular player. It's not necessarily a relationship with the team as much as it is, we have 10 kids on our 2012 team, our top 20, and it's having 10 individual relationships instead of one with the team. And it's great because I get invited to birthday parties, right, for my players, and they remember my birthday and Christmas presents back and forth, and you have outings with the parents sometimes. Parents,
awesome.
Especially tournaments. You're going to lunch, and it's a good time to build that relationship with the parents and the players, and then because after they go into U9 and they leave me, the players leave me. That's the hardest thing, is when a player who's been with you since he was 4 and he's now 8, right? I've been his only coach for the last 4 years. For half his life, I've been his coach, right? And it's hard. It actually takes me a day or so to get over it when the players move on to the next phase. And all of those players who've moved on to other coaches throughout our organization, other great coaches who have the same philosophies that we do, right? Because we have coaches meetings about all of this stuff. They still come back and they still see me, and now they're friending me on Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that, and it's great. It's great that I still, once you develop that relationship, it stays. The relationship stays even after the player moves on, and it's fantastic. And they love it when I can come guest coach for them. Like in a tournament, they're like, Mike, we need coverage for the 2010s. And I'm like, all right, I get to go coach my boys again, right? It's great. So
I think just in summary, the idea of when you remember it's about the player, and it should be all about the player, then we have things like patience from the coach. We have things like player development. We have things like, relationships and developing trust. And if you ask anybody why they would coach, all of those are kind of the attributes that are part of the reason why they coach. They want that relationship. They want to empower kids. They want to help them develop and progress and become, not only great people, but great soccer players too. And just to throw it back, it's all about the kids. So, Michael, tell us, we follow you on Twitter. You and I have connected on Twitter. What's your handle on there? And anything else to wrap up before we say goodbye?
My Twitter handle is at TFC Coach Mike C. Crazy enough, at TFC Coach Mike had already been taken.
No way.
So, must have been somebody in Toronto, I guess. I don't know. But at TFC Coach Mike C is my current Twitter handle. I post a lot of videos of my training sessions with my young players. So if you need any ideas, I'm not the be all end all of soccer knowledge. I'm just I'm doing what I think is best based on our club's philosophy right now. There's a bunch of different philosophies out there. But I'm always available for an instant message or a conversation or a talk. I don't mind. So if you have anybody who needs to talk or say, hey, how would you handle this situation? Send me a message, follow me, do whatever. I guess.
And that's the soccer community at its heart right there. So, hey, Mike, I want to thank you and thank you for your commitment to the game, for staying with that age group and just giving them the best experience, creating the next generation of players. And even if they're not world beaters, they're going to be the people who remember the game and the love of the game. Even at the grassroots level, they're the kids that might become coaches and then continue that foundational love of the game for the next generation and the next generation. So I want to thank you for that, for growing the game that I love and that we both love, that it keeps it rolling. So I really appreciate your time, Michael. We will continue to connect, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Lee. Great. Had a lot of fun.
I'll wrap up this episode from the discussion with Michael with almost a preach, really, in that if you find yourself working with the younger ages and feeling like it's not as rewarding perhaps or as sexy as it is working with teams that are going to win State Cup, as we said in the conversation, just think about the impact that you're making and the players and the opportunity that you're giving them to love the game, to flourish within the game, but then also to become lifelong players. And I think if we're really looking at our impact on the players that we work with, with and kind of why we do what we do, if you find yourself along the same thought process as me, then this really is the place that probably most coaches belong, and the place that most coaches are going to find the most success, the most joy, and also the most challenge. It's a constant battle in terms of working and engaging with players and teaching them the why, and even from the idea of developing the patience required that we talked about for teaching players the why and not necessarily just giving them the answers. So I really encourage you to just take a second thought about the ages that you're working with and why, and wonder if those younger ages might be the future for you. Keep up to date with me, as always, at Lee Dunn Soccer. Check in with Coach Michael too. He is at TFC Coach Mike C, at TFC Coach Mike C. More coming from Heads and Volleys real soon. As always, thank you so much.